Hello there, lovely people. It's Alex from Nintendo Life here, and today we're reviewing Split Fiction for the Nintendo Switch 2. This review was originally written by the lovely Ken Talbot and has been adapted for video by me. But anyway, that's more than enough waffling. Let's dive right into things. You know, in many ways, Split Fiction feels like the culmination of everything Hazelight Studios has accomplished in the co-op space. The journey began in, admittedly a different studio, with Brothers: A Tale of Two Sons, a charming fantasy that required solo players to coordinate both thumbs to control two characters simultaneously. The studio then progressed to A Way Out, a jailbreak caper that introduced several clever mechanics for two players, including the now standard Friends Pass system. More on that later. With It Takes Two, Hazelight pushed things even further, delivering a big adventure with a well-written, emotionally resonant story and great characters. Now comes Split Fiction, a near-flawless dual odyssey that perfects the studio's formula and delivers an epic experience of staggering variety. The game's many co-op trials might put your strongest relationships to the test, but you will never stop having fun. The story is, fittingly, about stories. Mio and Zoe are two aspiring writers lured to the shady tech giant Raider Publishing by the promise of a no-strings book deal. Upon arrival, they're suited up in Tron-like bodysuits and instructed to enter a set of strange floating bubbles. Mio hesitates and, after a brief struggle, ends up inside Zoe's bubble. As you might expect, they awaken inside the physical manifestation of their own combined imagination. Yeah, just what you expected. The two unlikely companions must survive their own ideas whilst trying to stop Raider from stealing their intellectual property. The adventure unfolds across two vastly different mindscapes built from the main character's chosen theme. Mio's choice of fiction is cyberpunk-style sci-fi, while Zoe prefers cozy, sort of high fantasy. These contrasting settings give Hazelight the perfect excuse to drop partners into dramatically different environments that demand teamwork, creative problem-solving, and synchronized playstyles. At its heart, Split Fiction thrives on this collision of two distinct genres, using the stylistic clash as a narrative engine to drive inventive cooperative gameplay. The plot is built to sustain momentum. Mio and Zoe are constantly plunged into tense in-media res scenarios that keep the action moving and players engaged. After a brief introduction at Raider Corp, our deuteragonists are thrown straight into chaos, first piloting a spaceship in a frantic battle, then fleeing from a horde of giant trolls. Soon after, they're swinging across the rooftop of a futuristic nightclub and bouncing around as a pair of pigs in a surprisingly dark fairy tale scenario. This all happens in the opening chapter. Each world is packed with elaborate set pieces, and the action rarely lets up. Mio and Zoe leap from one high-energy scenario to the next, pausing only occasionally for charming character-driven moments that deepen their bond. Slowly bringing these two contrasting archetypes together in the middle of all this action is a storytelling masterstroke, and one that pays off in the game's phenomenal final act. So what do you actually do in Split Fiction? What genre does it fall into? Well, the answer, quite simply, is pick one and then pick the rest of them. It's a puzzle game, it's a shooter, a brawler, a platformer, and sometimes all within the same level. Across its lengthy main story, there's a little bit of everything in there, and this grab-bag format means that you're constantly having to evolve and change what you do, but you're also expecting that, so you know what to expect because you know not to expect. The only drawback is that, by its very nature, the game doesn't linger on any one activity for long, and that's a bit of a shame because many of its ideas are strong enough that they could even support a full game just by themselves. Each chapter grants the aspiring writers a unique ability, and most of the level's progression is built around using that power in creative ways. Often, both players are required to perform different tasks simultaneously, making strong communication and patience absolutely essential. The challenges never feel overwhelming, and the game's generous checkpoint system ensures that frustration is largely kept to a minimum. Having said that, there are still moments that really will test the patience performance of you and your partner. Faster-paced sequences like high-speed chases or boss fights are often hilarious exercises in trial and error. What makes Split Fiction exceptional is the sheer variety of challenges you face. There are dozens of mechanically distinct minigames spread across this adventure, and every single one feels thoughtfully crafted. Alongside the linear main story, optional side quests offer wild artistic swings and some of the most difficult activities in the game. An unexpected bonus of this solid Switch 2 port is that it's a nice showcase of the console's capabilities, with the exception of mouse control, which is unfortunately missing, but at the same time, you probably don't need it. Firstly, it looks great. This is a gorgeous game with a vibrant art style and busy environments that often move at breakneck speeds. Performance remains stable throughout, aiming for 30 FPS when docked, at least when connected to a 60Hz monitor, and 40 FPS in handheld. By and large, it absolutely achieves that, stumbling only a little bit when encountering some of the bigger set pieces. It would have been nice to have 60 frames a second, but all things considered, it runs incredibly well with that lower frame rate. The big feature here, though, is the Friends Pass system. Like previous Haze-like games, two separate consoles can share a single copy of the game. This time, too, you can use Switch 2 and Nintendo's Game Share feature to host a session that even an original Switch 1 can join. This not only offers incredible value, but also ensures that co-op partners who don't own the new console aren't left out. As it's just being basically beamed from the host console and not running on the Switch 1 itself, the performance on the original Switch can be a little bit unpredictable, but all things considered, it's mostly steady. It's split screen anyway because you need to see what the other person's doing, so you could just plug it into a TV, but options are always nice. Alongside Game Share and the option to play local split screen and online, you can also enjoy crossplay, so there's a generous number of ways to play with others. Split Fiction is a singular experience, one you'll want to jump right back into after the credits roll. It's the crowning achievement of Hazelight, a studio whose every release is becoming a notable event. It's also a great time on Switch 2 and ranks among the very best of the launch lineup. Split Fiction feels like a gift. Its sole aim is to entertain and bring players together by testing them at every turn. Hazelight gives us two very distinct worlds, each filled with a huge array of activities for co-op partners to enjoy and argue over. It serves as a surprising visual showcase for the Switch 2 and enhances the Friend Pass feature, allowing our original Switch buddies to join in the fun. Split Fiction, you're getting a 9 out of 10 from us. You've reached the end of the review. That means it's time for Alex's personal thoughts, and I absolutely loved this game. I do have to say that I think that the opening chapter is I'd say opening chapter. The opening, couple of chapters are probably the weakest overall, and I think it's just because things are as simple as they need to be, because they're introducing you to the ideas of the game and the idea of working together. Kind of a necessary evil in a way, but I do think that it's the sort of like the midway through the game and the latter part of the game where it really shines. Like, I loved It Takes Two to death. I adored it. I didn't think that Split Fiction was going to surpass it. I thought it was lacking a little bit of the sort of like charm of It Takes Two, being a bit more sort of, I suppose, straight-laced in its setting, or settings, I suppose. I couldn't have been more wrong. This is better than It Takes Two for me, and I love that game. And it is an absolute stunner on Switch 2. I was really surprised, to be honest. Yeah, I was stuck playing it at 30 frames a second because I was doing it docked on a 60Hz screen, but honestly, you kind of just forget about it. It's a really solid 30 frames a second. And so, in my mind, it works. It's not like a Twitch platformer or like a Call of Duty Counter-Strike shooter, so it's fine. I do have one minor complaint, and that's mostly around the pacing of the game. There are certain moments where you sort of feel that, it's reaching the climax, and then you'd sort of get, brought back down, and then, it's reaching the climax, and you're brought back down again. And maybe that's just a me thing, but, I was playing with my wife, and she felt the same way. Just the way that the game presents itself is almost a bit like when you're watching a TV series, or at least a modern one, and it's like cliffhanger ending, and then it's back to normal, and then cliffhanger ending, like time and time again. It's not a big deal, by any means, and it didn't ruin my enjoyment of the game, but just something to bear in mind. Another thing I would like to just briefly mention is the asymmetry of the game. Like, I mean, a lot of the time, it's not equal. Like, there's an instance in the fantasy world where one of you're shapeshifters. One of you can be a fairy and a tree ent type thing. The other person can be an ape or an otter, standard. And more often than not, I, as Zoe playing as tree person and fairy, I was constantly supporting and aiding my wife, whereas she was just sort of like occasionally would break something and that would allow me to fly over as a fairy, and that wasn't the only instance, but that was most of what it was. So it felt a bit imbalanced in that moment. But then there are other instances in other games where it was perfectly balanced and you're helping each other, and those are the moments that I really, really loved. It's like, hey, you know, sort of, I can't get across it, and it's like, don't worry, I'll help you, and then they do one thing and then you do another, and you can make these little steps forward in order to reach your goal. That was always the best, you know? There are not enough co-op games out there, and this is absolutely ticking all the boxes for me. I love the story, I love the characters. Hazelight, you've done it again.